Hi and welcome to another video. This one will be on the shorter side. Essentially, it's a small selection of some more snake observations I thought I'd share with you all. Just like my past video about my ball python, these are some things I noticed about my snakes that I hadn't really anticipated before keeping them, as these things were rarely, if ever, mentioned in mainstream care guides, forums, or on social media. None of these observations are especially revolutionary, but they did take me by surprise, and if you also have snakes, I'm curious to know if you observed similar things in your animals. Firstly, we have the topic of recognition. It took me a while to notice, but recently I became fairly certain that my snakes recognize me, in the sense that they can distinguish me from other people. Now, this is more apparent in the ball python than the corn snake, as the corn snake is generally more shy and reserved, even towards me, so I don't handle her too much. I also don't handle the ball python much. The only time I pick her up is to move her if she ends up going somewhere she shouldn't be. However, the ball python seems to tolerate this, and she has no problem coming out of her terrarium when I open the door for her, even if I stay seated right next to her, watching her move around. She doesn't actively move towards me, but she will move right past me without caring that I am nearby. However, each time I had friends stay over at my place, which, wasn't often, but still happened a few times, I would tell them that we can let the python out in the evening so they would be able to see her. But then, each time they were around, the most the python would do was stick her head out of her terrarium and remain there, not going any further. She does do this even when it's just me around, but it is quite the remarkable pattern that she would roam around in the evenings before my guests arrived and in the evenings after they left, but not during the evenings that other people were in the room with her. It's not like they were banging on my terrarium glass or crowding the snake. I always make sure that my guests do not interact any differently with these snakes than I do. So yeah, it seems she can tell my scent apart from that of other humans, and she has learned to be comfortable around me, but not around them. Regarding the corn snake, it's less apparent. She did try to strike at my friend once through the glass of her terrarium at like 4 a.m, which I've never observed her doing to me, but I'm not sure if that was in response to my friend or if she was just hungry. I'm pretty sure she can tell the difference between people, but I don't think she likes me enough to care. Next, I'd briefly like to touch on the subject of freedom. Now, I won't go into too much detail here as I dedicated an entire video to this topic, but not only do my snakes, especially my ball python, enjoy having the opportunity to regularly roam around freely outside of their enclosure, in the case of my python, she will actually exhibit stress-like behavior if she wants out but cannot get out, almost akin to throwing a tantrum. I should note that she actually has a fairly large terrarium, so it's not like I'm keeping her trapped in a tiny box. But in general, I noticed that regardless of enclosure size, if you give snakes the opportunity to access space outside of these enclosures, they will typically make use of it. I even observed this in my corn snake, who is a lot more chill and shy than my ball python. Unfortunately, she is too small to be roaming around the apartment freely, but I did purchase this puppy playpen type thing that I regularly let her into if I see her leaning up against her terrarium glass and wanting out. I like to put a bunch of things inside for her to explore, and sometimes I also put little food items in there for her to go hunting, which is very fun to watch, or I do a bit of target training. Another surprising thing I observe is that both of my snakes seem to have a sense of hygiene. Just a warning, this section will be about poop, so if you don't want to hear that, skip to the timestamp shown on screen. Both seem to have their preferred spots to do their business in their enclosures, and these spots are in the far corner of the cool side for both snakes. The ball python has a very specific area she sticks to, while the corn snake can be a bit more flexible. However, the corn snake never ever pooped in any of her hides, while the ball python will occasionally do so. However, if she does, it's usually a small number 1 and never a number 2. Although I should add that when she was still trapped in her far too small enclosure that I adopted her in, she would actually regularly poop in the hides, and each time she did, she would then immediately try and get out of her enclosure afterwards by pushing up against the glass, so clearly she didn't want to be in close proximity to the excrement. Even in her bigger enclosure, she will actually often want out directly after doing her business to go chill somewhere else, which then gives me the opportunity to clean her terrarium while she's outside. While the corn snake doesn't seem to have this immediate escape from the poop response, I did observe that she does prefer to do her business outside of her enclosure entirely. So when I let her roam around in her little playpen, she will consistently seize the opportunity to do her business there there to the point where I will not let her roam around in there without first lining the entire thing with multiple layers of newspapers because it just kept happening. Content warning for super disgustingness, but corn snake just dropped the largest poop I have ever seen relative to body size. I don't want to touch it, but this is my hand. How did that much come out of this snake? And sure, snakes aren't as stinky as your average mammalian, although the corn snake can be quite the little stinker. Their waste still smells bad, especially to them. Remember, they have a very highly developed sense of smell, and that's one of the main ways they perceive the world around them. So it's only natural that they will have preferences regarding where or where not to do their business. This is also one of the many reasons why I pity the poor animals stuck in very small enclosures or racks, because they're essentially trapped in the worst kind of hot box. Okay, on a less gross subject, basking. Now, depending on what circle of the reptile hobby you are in, this may or may not be a revolutionary observation, but it is known that snakes bask in the wild. Yes, even the nocturnal ones. However, the extent to which snakes bask, considering both species I have tend to be more on the crepuscular or nocturnal side, was quite astounding to me. Considering snakes don't have eyelids, they sure love sticking their head directly into sunlight, or in my case a top-down heat source in combination with a UV light. While the corn snake will at any given time usually have some part of her body out in the open, also known as cryptic basking, the ball python does spend quite a bit of time completely out of the light. However, she will come out to bask almost every day, and sometimes she gets really into it, for lack of a better term, and by that I mean she will go directly under her light, like 5 centimeters away from her UVB tube. She also likes sticking her head right up to the tube, and sometimes she will even poke it with her snoot, which is maybe not the best thing to do because it does get quite hot. However, she never really spends more than a few minutes staring into the sun in this way, so I'm not too worried about this behavior. But she does really seem to enjoy reveling in the UVA and UVB rays produced by the tube in this way. What really solidified that she not only recognizes this light source but also responds positively to it was when I replaced the old UVB tube in her enclosure after it had been in use for over a year. You see, the problem with these kinds of lights are that their UV output will decrease over time, while the visible light produced will remain unchanged, which means you, a mammalian, will not be able to notice any difference. Therefore, it is recommended to switch the lamps out after a certain amount of time, usually specified by the manufacturer, to ensure that the reptile will have constant access to UVB. Anyway, I popped in the new tube, and within a minute, the python, who had been hiding away in her cold hide on the far side of the enclosure, came out and just sprawled out under the light. Clearly, she had noticed the sunlight had returned to her enclosure and decided to make use of it. You see, reptiles can see UVA, so they will absolutely notice if it is there or not. And that is why, in general, I think most, if not all, reptile species will benefit from UVB lighting at the appropriate levels, even if some species, like many snakes, do not need it for their survival. Basking and seeing UV is part of their natural behavior, so we should let them do it. So, I was actually about to finish recording, but then I realized I forgot about one little observation. I'd say this one is more on the philosophical side. So you know how snakes have this reputation of being these fearsome, fast and powerful predators? You see it in the mainstream media, and you will sometimes see it in the way certain keepers and breeders market or discuss their animals. Well, what really struck me when I started keeping snakes of my own is how much they don't really live up to that reputation. In fact, I'd say my snakes tend to act more like prey animals than fearsome predators most of the time. They hate moving out in the open without having some structure to lean against or hide behind. Not having access to hides is extremely stressful to them. They generally do not like being picked up and moved around. And in my experience, it seems a lot harder to get a snake accustomed to handling than other prey animals such as hamsters or rabbits. For example, my python has been in her terrarium on the ground level of my apartment for over a year. But if I accidentally walk past her too fast, she will instinctively whip her head back as if I were an attacker from above. And it makes sense. Snakes are small and not especially fast, and in their native environments there are plenty of things that would absolutely not hesitate to eat them. And even the damage they can do is comparatively small to that inflicted by other animals of their size or smaller. For instance, the bite of a hamster or rabbit is a lot more damaging than that of a corn snake. I'm not sure about the python, but I'm fairly certain that a dog or a cat can do a lot more to hurt you than the vast majority of python species out there. In general, snake species like corn snakes and ball pythons tend to be some of the least aggressive and most sensitive animals you can have as pets. They tend to prioritize escaping far more than defending themselves, at least compared to other, more traditional types of pets that I have interacted with so far. And that's all for now. Let me know if you share any of my observations. Getting feedback from others is one of the most interesting aspects of running this small channel. And with that, I will see you in the next video. Bye bye.